You're crazy. Mom, you're 65, not 30. It's hard to find a cake with 65 candles these days. Who needs you? Look at yourself in the mirror. At your wrinkles, at your gray hair. He wants to marry you so that in a year he can be a rich widower, my daughter said when she heard that Nathan had proposed to me. I've known this man my whole life. He was my husband's best friend. We've had over 100 family barbecues with him. His wife married a Mexican man half her age, but he seduced her while he was tidying up their garden near the house. Nathan couldn't believe that she was capable of cheating. He hadn't gone on a date in over 10 years. He thought all women were just like his sissy. But what broke out between us wasn't just a casual affair. He doesn't care about my money, but my children are worried about my bank accounts. If you're listening to this, subscribe to my channel to get even more interesting stories every day. I'm Patricia, 65, and I have decided to begin. Begin what? Everything I once postponed for, after the kids grow up, and after your father gets better, and after I retire. If you wait long enough, after turns into never, until something cracks and lets the light in. It cracked on an ordinary Tuesday. I had just lifted the lid of the slow cooker when Nathan phoned to ask if I'd like to try a new diner off Route 17. The one with the neon pie sign. I asked, pretending nonchalance while my heart clanged like a spoon in a garbage disposal. He chuckled and said yes, the neon pie, the one we joked about for a decade and never visited. I told him I'd meet him there in an hour. Then I spent 40 minutes arguing with my closet like it owed me money. Here is the first hook I owe you. I didn't feel old. Not for 1 second. Age is noisy in a bathroom mirror but very quiet when a person looks at you like you are news worth reading. Nathan looked at me like that across a Formica table, while the neon pie blinked in the window and the waitress called everyone, hon. He asked about my garden, and I asked about his lonely house that still smelled like lemon oil and regret. We slid into laughter the way people slide into a song they both know by heart. His hands shook a little when he reached for his water. Mine shook when our knees grazed beneath the table. I came home with cinnamon on my lips and possibilities in my chest. Then my daughter's words, "Who needs you?" fell over me like a wet tarpaulin. I'm not angry at her. I raised 2 girls on worry and coupons. I taught them to call when they arrived and to keep a 20 in their shoe. I built a fortress out of caution and then locked myself in it. The problem with fortresses is that you can grow old inside them and learn to decorate the bars. Another hook, the night after that date, I took off my wedding ring. Don't clutch your pearls, my husband has been gone 9 years. I kept the ring not because of love, there is plenty of that, but because of habit, which is the heaviest jewelry. I set it in the velvet box, whispered thank you, and closed the lid. Nathan called the next morning to say he had made coffee strong enough to wake the dead and convert the living, and would I like to try some? I said yes. I almost said always. He stood on my porch with a thermos and that shy boy smile I remember from backyard grill smoke and football Sundays. We drank from mismatched mugs I'd saved for company I never invited. When he left, he told me, I feel new. You do that to me. Then he laughed at himself for sounding like a Hallmark card, and I secretly wanted to frame the sentence and hang it above the sink. Then came the part that tests a woman. He went quiet. At first it was a day. Then 2. Then a week. His profile winked green on social media, that hateful little dot breathing like a tiny lie. I posted pictures of sunflowers and blueberry muffins, pretending I was fine, because that's what women my age do. We make fine out of flour and keep serving it warm. The truth? I refreshed that green dot like it held oxygen. By the end of week 2, I told myself a bitter bedtime story. He'd come to his senses. He'd remembered the gossip, the funerals, the way small towns fold over a scandal like a newspaper. Maybe he'd decided he'd ruined enough of his life with love and didn't need to ruin mine too. Whatever his reasons, silence is a language, and I am literate. Enough, I told the bathroom mirror, the one that knows all my drafts. I called my friend Lorna, who once backpacked the Appalachian Trail at 60. Lorna believes a woman's passport should be as wrinkled as her neck. Let's go somewhere you can't refresh, she said. We picked a neighboring state, nothing dramatic, just a line on a map and a promise that I would cross it. We drove past square cornfields and churches with message boards that tried to be funny about Jesus. We sang along to old radio and bought peaches from a boy with a summer mustache. There is a kind of holiness in leaving without asking permission. The motel smelled like citrus cleaner and pool chlorine. The sheets were rough and honest. Lorna slept with the TV on low. I slept with the window cracked like a prayer. We met Jeremy in a bookshop cafe, another hook for you. He was my age, with a professor's beard and a carpenter's hands, nursing a cup like it contained last chances. He asked if the lemon bars were worth the sugar. I told him everything sweet is worth a risk. He said, even people, and I said, especially people. We spoke about Steinbeck and pickup trucks and the way the heart keeps embarrassing itself. He did not flirt, he admired. Admiration is flirtation's older, steadier brother. We walked the small town square like tourists in our own country. He told me he'd retired from teaching shop class and now restored old radios for fun. They still pick up voices if you're patient, he said. Isn't that a life lesson? I answered, and he smiled like a man hearing his favorite song. When I left with Lorna, he asked if he could call me sometime, not to chase me, just to talk. The word sometime felt gentle as rain. I wrote my number on a museum ticket stub and felt, for the first time in weeks, unpunished by hope. Back home, the house recognized me with that particular sound old houses make, floorboards greeting your weight, refrigerator motor clearing its throat. My daughters had filled the fruit bowl but took the freedom out of the air. They love me, I know that. They also love the version of me who is always available and never complicated. We confuse good mother with absent woman, and the bill comes due in our 60s. Jeremy called that evening. We talked for 2 hours about nothing and everything, dogs we'd loved, foods that betrayed us, songs we pretended not to cry to. He did not try to rescue me. He did not vanish. When he laughed, it sounded like a porch swing. I slept hard, like a door closing on a room I was finished cleaning. Morning brought flowers from Nathan, wild, unarranged, as if picked in apology. No note. The petals smelled like the diner's cinnamon and the thermos coffee and the way his hands had trembled. I carried them to the sink, filled a jar, and told myself not to invent a letter he hadn't written. If you are waiting for the explosion, here it comes at the gentlest speed. I chose not to wait. I chose to live. I texted Nathan a simple thank you and then put my phone face down. I called Lorna and asked if she wanted to drive to the lake for sandwiches. I opened the windows wide enough to let last year out. But in the afternoon, when the house was quiet and the sunlight made coin shapes on the floor, the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door to find 2 shadows of the past crossing my threshold, one made of silence, the other of possibility. I recognized the first shadow by the way it filled the doorway and then looked for permission to enter. Nathan stood there with a paper bag cradled like something fragile. He was clean-shaven in the way men are when they're trying to reset a clock. You know, he said, voice soft, almost sheepish, I dreamed about you today. I brought you a scarf, here. You left it when you were last at my place. He pulled out the silk, blue with little gold swallows, and held it up like proof that we had existed together in a room. Before I could answer, the second shadow cleared his throat. Jeremy stepped from the sidewalk, one hand lifted, the other holding a small box of pastries. Am I too early? He asked, eyes flicking from me to Nathan. He wore the look decent men wear when they've accidentally walked into someone else's prayer. 2 men on my porch, and me in the doorway like a hinge. If life is kind, it gives you metaphors when you most need them. I tied the scarf around my neck without thinking, an answer I didn't fully understand yet, and invited them both in. We found positions in the living room like chess pieces trying to pretend we were checkers. Nathan took the edge of the couch, palms on his knees. Jeremy stood for a gentleman's beat, then sat in the chair by the window, where the light made a silver crown of his hair. The pastry box sat unopened on the coffee table like a question. I'm Nathan, Nathan said, and offered a hand across air that neither of them seemed eager to cross. Old friend of the family. Jeremy, Jeremy said. New friend of Patricia's. His voice was warm, but the word new put a small current through the room. I served coffee because women of my generation were trained to use cups as shields. We spoke carefully, like we were all made of glass. Jeremy asked about the scarf. Nathan told a brief, sanitized story about a rainy afternoon and a forgotten neck. I added sugar to my mug that I didn't need, just to give my hand someplace to go. When the conversation reached that polite exhaustion, Nathan stood. Well. I should go, he said, his voice stepping back before his body did. He looked at the scarf once more, then at me as if asking for instructions we'd never written. He shook Jeremy's hand then, firm and old-fashioned. Something passed between them I couldn't translate, recognition, maybe, that they were both, in different ways, trying to be brave. After he left, the room felt like a stage after the actor's bow. Jeremy exhaled and smiled the smile that had made me talk about nothing for 2 hours and feel seen anyway. He loves you, he said simply. I opened my mouth to argue and found only the truth sitting there. I love him, I answered, and the simplicity of the sentence embarrassed me and freed me in the same instant. But love and timing are like two trains. Sometimes they pass each other and wave. Jeremy nodded. The kindest thing he did was not flinch. I'm visiting my sister tonight, he said. I had hoped to be a stopover at your place, but that was before I knew this porch had weather. He grinned to make the sentence lighter. Let me take a rain check, Patricia. The way he said my name put it back in my mouth, ownership restored. I booked you a hotel, I admitted, a little too quickly. Honesty as a lifeline. He looked relieved and grateful in the way men do when a woman refuses to pretend. He pressed my hand, promised to call before his morning flight, and left me with the pastries and a quiet that was no longer empty, just waiting. I told myself I would not analyze the sound of every car on the street. I told myself I would read a book with no romance and take a bath hot enough to erase second-guessing. I made it through 6 pages and 3 chapters of memory. Then the phone rang. Good night, Nathan said. The word was hushed, intimate, as if the phone itself were a candle. I wanted to say it out loud. Good night, I echoed, and added because I am still a woman who cooks comfort where she can, drives safe, even if it's just from the living room to the bedroom. We laughed, soft and human, and hung up. I stood in my nightgown for a long minute, listening to the house breathe. I tied the short silk robe over it, habit more than modesty, and went to rinse the mugs. Then the knock. 3 gentle raps, like he was greeting a skittish bird. When I opened the door, the porch light made a halo in the mist. Nathan stood there, not clean-shaven now but unhidden, the paper bag gone, his courage bare as the first step on a dance floor. Words tumbled out of him like a confession he'd been carrying too long. I can't stand it, he said. I can't stand the distance between your goodnight and mine. He looked at me, really looked, and his gaze slowed on my face the way a hand slows on a beloved's shoulder. I dreamed you were holding out your hands, he whispered, and I woke up to find mine empty. Then don't leave them empty, I replied, and even I was startled by the steadiness in my voice. I'm not a girl anymore to hesitate and fight off such hugs. I don't know what happened to me, but at this moment I want only one thing. To feel you, to be with you, to let you love me. He stepped inside, closed the door with a care that felt like a vow, and kissed me. Not the desperate kiss of a man proving something to himself, but the quiet, built thing of years, glances over smoke and lawn chairs, hands passing plates, jokes that landed 3 days later. He kissed me like a porch remembers every summer. My fingers found the back of his neck. The scarf slid, birds diving, and fell to the floor like a blessing. Romance at our age is a restoration, not an invention. We did not rush. We moved like people who had earned every inch of tenderness and were finally allowed to walk through. He rested his forehead against mine and laughed, low and astonished. My heart is louder than the refrigerator, he said. It's embarrassing. Let it embarrass the house, I answered. We stood there, swaying in a dance that looked to the untrained eye like stillness, and the world, which had been a loud chorus of opinions and timelines, fell to a manageable hum. Later, we lay side by side and talked with the lights off, that old teenage ritual redeemed by the fact that no one expected us to be good at pretending anymore. He told me about the 10-year desert after Sissy left, how love had felt like a border he'd been caught crossing. I told him about the fortress I'd decorated and the key I had misplaced under motherhood. We did not make promises. We offered presents, which is a rarer currency. I slept. Really slept. The kind that isn't bargaining with the morning. Which is why, when the morning arrived with the shrill of my doorbell and the sound of a key scratching at the lock, the crack between worlds was so abrupt my name fell out of my mouth like a dropped glass. I grabbed the robe, tied it crooked, and met the doorway with hair that told the truth. Nancy stood there with a jar of honey and a paper bag from the pharmacy, righteous as a courier of good works. She took one look at me, then passed me to where Nathan was picking up the scarf from the floor, and her mouth made a shape my grandbabies would giggle to imitate. "Mom," she said, and the word landed like a gavel. "Uncle Nathan?" Behind her, the morning widened like a stage curtain, and I understood this scene would have an audience whether I invited one or not. Nancy's voice carried through the doorway like an alarm bell. "Mom." "Uncle Nathan?" Her eyes went wide, not with surprise exactly, but with the smug certainty of someone who had expected to catch you red-handed and finally did. Behind her, the morning sun spilled into the hallway. I felt exposed, as if the light itself had joined the prosecution. I tugged my robe tighter and glanced at Nathan. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't even flustered. He straightened his shoulders like a man who had decided he wouldn't be ashamed of wanting someone, even if the audience was hostile. "Good morning, Nancy," he said calmly, as though this were just another Saturday after a barbecue, when he'd come to help fix the grill. I was just leaving. But Nancy's silence was louder than his politeness. Her eyes swept the living room, the scarf on the rug, the mugs on the table, the telltale signs of two people who hadn't spent the night apart. She held the jar of honey so tightly I thought the glass might shatter in her hand. "Don't bother, I'll call Sarah," she muttered, pulling out her phone before I could speak. My other daughter's name landed like a gavel, summoning reinforcements. "Stop," I said sharply. The word surprised even me. I sounded less like their mother and more like a woman defending her own house. "You will not call your sister." "Put the phone away, Nancy." Her eyes flashed. "Mom, are you out of your mind? He's been Dad's best friend since before we were born. You think people won't talk? You think this is love? He's just..." "Enough," Nathan interrupted. His voice was low, controlled, but it filled the room. "I will not stand here and be slandered in the house of the woman He stopped himself, glanced at me, then finished, "in the house of the woman I respect." Respect. The word landed softer than love, but it had the weight of stone. Nancy's phone trembled in her hand. She turned on her heel and stormed out, muttering, "Sarah needs to know." The door slammed. Silence followed, thick as syrup. I turned to Nathan, my heart racing. "You should go," I whispered. Not because I wanted him gone, but because I knew the war was just beginning, and I didn't want him to be collateral damage. He looked at me for a long moment. "I'll go," he said finally, "but not because I'm ashamed. Only because you asked." He touched my hand briefly, so brief it felt like a promise disguised as a goodbye, and walked out the door. I sank onto the couch, robe twisted, hair tangled, and realized that for the first time in my life, my daughters were no longer just my children. They were my adversaries. Sarah arrived that afternoon, furious, her car pulling up like an ambulance. She didn't knock. She barged in, grocery bags in her arms, her face set like stone. "Is it true?" she demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of betrayal and self-righteousness. "Is Nathan living here now?" I laughed, though it sounded more like a bark. "No, Sarah. He's not living here. He came over. We talked. I stopped. Why should I explain myself like a teenager sneaking in after curfew? Sarah dropped the grocery bags on the counter and spun on me. Do you know what this looks like? Do you know what people will say about Dad's memory? About you? I rose from the couch and walked over until we were almost nose to nose. I know exactly what it looks like. It looks like a woman who's been alone for nearly a decade finding a little bit of joy again. And if people want to turn that into gossip, let them choke on it. She recoiled, shocked. Maybe it was the first time I had spoken to her as Patricia, not just Mom. But her shock didn't stop her. That night, she stayed in the house, pacing the hallway outside my bedroom like a guard. I heard her whispering to Nancy on the phone, plotting in the dark. Their voices carried through the vents. We have to protect her money. We have to make sure she doesn't give everything to him. Money. Always money. Not my heart, not my happiness. Money. I lay in bed, listening to the conspiratorial hiss of my own daughters, and felt something harden inside me. They weren't here to protect me. They were here to protect their inheritance. The next morning, as if on cue, Jeremy stopped by. He was on his way to the airport, suitcase in hand, but wanted to say goodbye in person. He hugged me warmly in the doorway, called me sweetheart, and pressed a note into my palm. For when you feel lonely, he whispered. Nancy appeared at the top of the stairs in her bathrobe, arms crossed, glaring. Sarah stepped into the hallway behind her, eyes darting between me, Jeremy, and the note. The scene played out like a twisted play. Jeremy smiled, oblivious to the tension, waved politely, and left. As soon as his car pulled away, Sarah said coldly, "You really are enjoying this, aren't you? Men coming and going from your house like you're 20 again. How long before Nathan realizes you're stringing him along too?" I wanted to scream, to shake them, to make them see me. But all I did was clutch the note tighter in my hand. When I opened it later, it was just 3 words, written in Jeremy's careful script: "Call me anytime." And for the first time, I understood what Nathan must have felt when he went silent. How easy it is to doubt yourself when love shows up in an unexpected season. The war inside my house had only just begun. And though I didn't know it then, it would take a ring, a proposal, and a final act of defiance to end it. The days after Jeremy's visit became a theater of small humiliations. Nancy and Sarah treated me like a fragile vase they wanted to move to a higher shelf, not because they valued me, but because they wanted to control where I stood. Jeremy's note lay folded in my dresser, a lifeline I reread at night when the house was too loud with their whispers. He sent me messages every morning, filled with warmth. "Sweetheart, hope you slept well. Honey, I thought of you when I heard this song. Little bird, I'll call tonight." His words should have comforted me, but instead they became tinder for a fire Nathan didn't even know he was stoking. Because Nathan noticed. He came by one afternoon with a bag of groceries, claiming he had extra tomatoes from a neighbor's garden. I saw his eyes flick to my phone as it buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with Jeremy's message: "Sweetie, I miss your laugh already." Nathan's jaw tightened, his hand clenching the bag until the plastic groaned. "Friend of yours?" he asked casually, though his voice was taut like a rope about to snap. "Yes," I said evenly, refusing to be ashamed. "Jeremy. He calls." His smile was tight, brittle. "He seems persistent." "He's kind," I replied. "And he doesn't disappear for weeks without a word." That landed like a blow. Nathan set the tomatoes on the counter a little too firmly. "I made a mistake," he admitted, voice low. "I thought silence would protect me from more disappointment. But I see it only gave someone else the chance to stand where I should have been." I wanted to hug him. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to do both at once. Instead, I poured us both iced tea and let the silence carry the weight. He left soon after, his eyes clouded, his goodbye short. That night, he vanished again. Meanwhile, my daughters had grown bolder. Sarah cornered me in the kitchen with a pen and a thick stack of papers. "It's just a precaution," she said sweetly, sliding the documents toward me. You're not getting younger, Mom. We need to make sure your will is in order. I'm not going to die, I said, stabbing my fork into a slice of pie with unnecessary force. Not today, not tomorrow. And when I do, you'll inherit everything anyway. Why rush death's paperwork? Nancy chimed in from the doorway. Because people get ideas, Mom. Especially men like Nathan. What if he talks you into leaving him the house? Or the accounts? We'd be out on the street. You mean, I said coldly, you'd have to get jobs. The silence that followed was thicker than pie crust. Their faces, two mirrors of my own younger stubbornness, hardened. And I knew then, they weren't afraid of losing me. They were afraid of losing their comfortable little kingdom, the one I had funded for years. That night, I found Sarah asleep in the armchair outside my bedroom door, her phone glowing in her lap. Nancy took her shift the following evening, camped outside like a soldier. They claimed it was to look after me. But I saw the truth, they were guards, not caretakers. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spin, and realized, I was a prisoner in my own house. The following morning brought a strange kind of reprieve. Jeremy showed up again before his flight, suitcase in hand, and asked if he could say goodbye properly. He hugged me at the door, kissed my cheek, and pressed another note into my palm. Behind us, the stairs creaked. Nathan stood there, having let himself in with the spare key he still had from the old barbecue days. His eyes locked on the scene, Jeremy's hand on mine, the suitcase by the door, the warmth between us that wasn't quite love but could look like it. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He just said, I see. Then he turned and walked out, the door clicking shut behind him with devastating finality. My daughters rushed down the stairs moments later, all smug triumph and sharp whispers. Good, Nancy hissed. That should get rid of him. But my heart cracked. Because even if Jeremy was steady, even if his notes were kind, it wasn't his voice I wanted to hear at night. It wasn't his silence that haunted me. It was Nathan's. Always Nathan's. That evening, as if to twist the knife deeper, Sarah placed the will papers on my nightstand while I brushed my teeth. Just sign them, Mom, she urged. It's only logical. We need security. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, wrinkled, gray-haired, tired. And then I laughed. Really laughed. Because I finally saw the absurdity. I was 65 years old, still raising two grown daughters who treated me like their ATM machine and their hostage. That night, I didn't sign a single paper. Instead, I slipped Jeremy's note into my drawer beside Nathan's scarf. Two tokens of two different men. One who loved me, one who admired me. And me, stuck between them, while my daughters circled like vultures. I closed my eyes and made a silent vow, this war for my life would not end with me surrendering. The idea of escape came to me on a Tuesday morning, as I stood in line at the grocery store with nothing but milk and apples in my cart. Behind me, a young couple argued over cereal brands, their laughter threaded through the bickering, the kind of everyday intimacy that made my chest ache. I realized then, I didn't have to live this way. I wasn't chained to the walls of my own house, patrolled by daughters who loved my money more than my breath. Jeremy had called the night before, his voice warm as always. Patricia, come visit me. Even just for a week. I'll show you the farmer's market, the little jazz cafe. You'll feel free here. His offer hung in my ears like a melody I couldn't stop humming. For the first time, moving, leaving everything behind, didn't sound like abandonment. It sounded like survival. That night, I packed a small bag and tucked it under the bed. Just in case. Nathan must have sensed my restlessness, because he appeared 2 days later, unannounced. He looked different, sharper somehow, as if indecision had been weighing him down and he'd finally shrugged it off. He carried a small box in his pocket, though I didn't notice until later. Patricia, he began, standing in the doorway, his voice rough with urgency. I know I've been a fool. I know I let silence ruin what could have been the best years of my life. But I can't let you slip away. Not to Jeremy. Not to anyone. Not even to your own doubts. I opened my mouth to answer, but he stepped closer, eyes bright, hands trembling. Then, with a sudden bravery that stole my breath, he dropped to one knee. Listen to me, he said. My heart is dead without you. My bed is cold without you. My hands are cold when you are not hugged. My lips are hungry if you are not kissed. Patricia, marry me. Be my last and truest love. The box opened. Inside, a ring that sparkled as if it had been waiting decades to catch this exact light. I gasped. My heart leapt and faltered at the same time. For a moment, I forgot about Nancy and Sarah, about Jeremy's steady voice, about the fortress of caution I'd lived in. For a moment, I was only a woman, 65, staring at the man who had known me half my life and still wanted me enough to kneel for me. Yes, I whispered, before fear could drag the word back into my throat. Yes, Nathan. His arms wrapped around me, lifting me, spinning me in the living room like we were teenagers. I laughed until tears blurred the room. It felt like spring after a decade of winter. But spring never comes without storms. The front door creaked. Nancy stood there, grocery bag in hand, frozen mid-step. Behind her, Sarah arrived carrying folders, those damned will papers. Both of them stared, mouths open, eyes narrowing as they took in the sight of Nathan's arms around me and the ring flashing on my finger. What did you do? Sarah whispered, horror in her voice. Mom, you can't be serious. Nancy dropped the bag, apples rolled across the floor like accusations. He tricked you, she hissed. He wants everything. He'll take the house, the savings, he'll leave us with nothing. Nathan pulled me closer, his hands steady on mine. No, he said firmly. She's not yours to control. She's not your bank. She's your mother. And she has a right to live, not just exist. My daughters looked at me then, as if waiting for me to rebuke him, to side with them. But for the first time in years, I didn't. I lifted my chin, my voice steady. He's right. I've given you both everything. A home, money, comfort. But now, it's my turn. My life. My choice. They gasped, betrayed as though I'd stolen from them, instead of the other way around. Sarah's face hardened into something I barely recognized. Then you leave us no choice, she spat. If you won't sign the will, if you won't protect us, then we'll protect ourselves. The threat lingered in the air like smoke from a fire not yet lit. Nathan squeezed my hand. Patricia, he whispered, we need to stand together. Or they'll tear us apart. I nodded. My heart raced, but my decision was clear. For the first time in 65 years, I was ready to fight for myself. And for him. That night, the house didn't feel like mine anymore. The walls seemed to lean in with judgment, the hallway thick with my daughter's footsteps as they whispered behind closed doors. I sat at the kitchen table with Nathan, our hands linked like two conspirators planning a jailbreak. They won't stop, I murmured. They think they're protecting me, but really they're protecting their comfort. They don't want jobs, don't want bills, don't want reality. I've made it too easy for them. Nathan's jaw tightened. Then we take it back. I blinked at him. Take it back? Yes. This house. Your peace. Your choices. Patricia, you've been generous to a fault, but generosity becomes a prison when it's abused. It's time to remind them whose name is on the deed. His words lit something inside me. For years I'd been caretaker, provider, peacemaker. Now, for the first time, I was being asked to be a fighter. At 65, I thought my battles were over. Instead, they were just beginning. The next morning, Nancy tried a new tactic. She made pancakes, set the table, even poured my coffee just the way I liked it. We're only worried about you, Mom, she said, her voice dripping with sugar. You're vulnerable. Lonely. Men like Nathan take advantage of women like you. Women like me? I asked, raising an eyebrow. You know, she said quickly. Older. Emotional. Easy to manipulate. Nathan, sitting across from me, stiffened. But I placed a hand on his arm, silencing him. Nancy, I said softly, if I'm old enough to be vulnerable, I'm also old enough to know what I want. Don't confuse my age with stupidity. She flushed, stabbing her pancake like it had insulted her. Later, Sarah cornered me in the hallway. If you go through with this, Mom, if you marry him, don't expect us to stick around. It was meant to be a threat. But instead, it sounded like freedom. That evening, Nathan and I sat on the porch, the twilight painting the sky in bruised purples and golds. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. I spoke to a lawyer, he admitted. If they try to force you into signing anything, you don't have to. You have rights. And if you want, we can file for eviction. The word hit me like a stone dropped in still water. Eviction. My daughters. The little girls whose hair I braided, whose lunches I packed, whose nightmares I soothed. Could I really throw them out of my house? Nathan must have seen the conflict on my face. He took my hand gently. Patricia, they're not little girls anymore. They're grown women. And grown women don't live off their mother forever, not without her permission. They've mistaken your kindness for weakness. It's time to remind them you're still the woman who raised them to survive. I closed my eyes, breathing in the evening air. He was right. But the thought of it twisted my stomach. The daughters didn't wait long to strike. That weekend, Jeremy's voice returned like a ghost. Sarah had taken my phone from the counter when I wasn't looking, scrolling through my messages. She saw every sweetheart, every little bird, every kind word Jeremy had sent. At dinner, she laid the phone on the table like a smoking gun. So this is what you've been hiding, she sneered. Another man, while Nathan waits around like a fool. Do you even know what you want, Mom? Or are you just desperate for attention? Nathan froze. His fork clattered against the plate. His eyes darkened as he stared at the screen, the words glowing like proof of betrayal. Jeremy, he asked, voice tight. I swallowed hard. He's a friend. That's all. But the damage was done. Nathan stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. I thought, he shook his head, unable to finish. I can't do this right now. He left the table, the sound of the front door slamming reverberating through me like a shot. Nancy and Sarah exchanged a triumphant glance. They thought they'd won. But they hadn't counted on me. I sat there long after the dishes went cold, my daughters whispering like vultures in the living room. I thought about Jeremy's steady kindness, about Nathan's fiery devotion, about my own reflection in the mirror every morning. I was tired of being managed. Tired of being doubted. Tired of being everyone's safety net. I rose, gathered the wool papers they'd left on the counter, and tore them in half. The sound was louder than thunder. Nancy gasped. Sarah's face went pale. This is my house, I said, my voice calm but unyielding. And I'll live my life as I choose. If you don't like it, find your own roof. Their silence was deafening. For the first time, I had their full attention. Nathan didn't call for 3 days. 3 long, aching days where every creak of the house made me think he was at the door, every buzz of my phone made me hope it was him. Instead, it was Jeremy, faithfully sending his morning greetings. Sweetheart, I hope today is kind to you. Little bird, don't forget to breathe. Honey, I miss your voice. I answered politely, but my heart wasn't in it. Jeremy was steady, yes. Gentle, yes. But he didn't set me on fire the way Nathan did. And fire, at 65, was rarer than diamonds. On the 4th night, Nathan showed up. No call, no warning. Just the sound of his truck pulling into the driveway, headlights painting the curtains. I opened the door before he could knock. He looked worn, as though jealousy had chewed at him from the inside. His eyes searched mine, desperate, defiant. "Is he the reason you keep hesitating with me?" he demanded. "Jeremy. Is that why you won't shut the door on him?" My chest tightened. "Nathan, he's a friend. He's company when you vanish into silence. I don't want him. I want you. But sometimes I'm afraid wanting you will break me again." His face softened, the storm in his eyes dimming to something rawer. He stepped forward, his hands trembling as they framed my face. "Then let me prove it. Don't let my mistakes push you into another man's arms. Don't punish us both because I was too scared." I leaned into his palms. "Then stop running." For the first time, he didn't leave. The daughters, however, were relentless. That weekend, Sarah cornered me again, this time armed not with papers, but with venom. "You think Nathan loves you? Please. He's playing the long game. Wait until he convinces you to sell the house, to sign over accounts. Then he'll vanish with everything, and we'll be left cleaning up your mess." Nancy nodded vigorously beside her. "At least Jeremy seems harmless. Maybe you should pick him instead. He doesn't want your money." Their words cut deep, not because I believed them, but because I realized how little they knew me. To them, I was a bank vault with wrinkles. Not a woman. Not a heart. That night, I sat on the porch with Nathan, telling him everything they'd said. He listened, jaw tight, then reached into his pocket. "I bought this the day after I left the first time," he admitted, pulling out the small velvet box. Inside, the ring glittered again, moonlight catching the stone. "Patricia, I can't compete with your daughter's suspicions. I can't compete with Jeremy's notes. But I can promise you this, I will not leave again. Not unless you tell me to. My bed is cold without you. My hands are cold when you are not hugged. My lips are hungry if you are not kissed. I don't care about your money. I care about you. So marry me. Let's put an end to their games once and for all." Tears burned my eyes. His words wrapped around me like a blanket I didn't know I'd been missing. "Yes," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I said yes before, Nathan. I'll say it again 100 times if I have to." His arms came around me, steady and sure. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving, I was choosing. The daughters overheard. They always did. That night, I caught them whispering in the kitchen, voices sharp as knives. "If she marries him, we'll lose everything," Sarah hissed. "Then we won't let it happen," Nancy answered. I stood in the hallway, their words slicing through me. Once, I would have felt guilty for defying them. But now? Now I felt steel in my spine. This was no longer a battle for inheritance. It was a battle for my life. And I was finally ready to fight. Nathan and I began to plan. Not in whispers of fear, but in calm, deliberate conversations at the kitchen table after the daughters had gone to bed. He laid out paperwork from his lawyer, showed me the steps I could take to reclaim my house fully, to ensure no one could manipulate me into signing away my freedom. "Patricia," he said one night, his hand covering mine, "you don't owe them a roof. You gave them life, food, education, and every chance to stand on their own. If they refuse to do it, that's their choice. But you don't have to carry their choices anymore." His words sank into me like rain into dry ground. For years, I had carried them, not just through childhood, but through adulthood. Their unpaid bills, their broken relationships, their endless excuses. Love had become servitude, and I had allowed it. Not anymore. The daughters must have sensed the shift, because they grew bolder in their sabotage. One morning I found Sarah at the dining table with Nathan's name pulled up on her laptop, combing through old newspaper archives. "What are you doing?" I asked, already bracing for the sting. "Looking for proof," she said flatly. "He must have something, debts, lawsuits, anything. Nobody is that perfect, Mom. He's hiding something." Nancy chimed in from the kitchen, her voice sharp with resentment. Jeremy's better. At least he's honest. He doesn't lurk around, pretending to be noble. He sends you sweet messages, Mom. He actually cares about you. I laughed, though the sound cracked. You two don't care if I'm happy. You just want to keep your claws in me. If Nathan had $1 million, you'd be pushing me down the aisle yourselves. They didn't even deny it. Their silence was louder than confession. That evening, Nathan came over. We sat on the porch while the girls sulked inside, and I told him everything, about their snooping, their venom, their obsession with Jeremy. He sighed deeply, rubbing the bridge of his nose. They're cornered animals, Patricia. They know the life they've built depends on you staying small, pliable. But you're not small anymore. You're not pliable. That terrifies them. I leaned against his shoulder, exhausted. Nathan, what if they never stop? What if it's always a war between them and us? He lifted my chin, his eyes steady. Then we win the war. Together. The daughters made their boldest move the next day. While I was out in the garden, Sarah invited Jeremy over. She must have found his number in my phone. When I came inside, I found him sitting awkwardly in the living room, clutching a bouquet of daisies, while Nancy and Sarah beamed like cats with cornered prey. Look who stopped by, Nancy said sweetly. Your real friend. Jeremy stood, flustered. I just wanted to see you before heading back. They said you'd be happy. My heart twisted. Jeremy was kind, too kind to realize he was being used as ammunition. I thanked him, accepted the daisies, and gently walked him to the door. But when I turned back, my daughters were smirking. See how easy it is, Mom? Sarah sneered. Two men fighting over you. You're embarrassing yourself. The cruelty stung. But instead of crying, I laughed, a full, unrestrained laugh that startled them. You think this embarrasses me? I said, my voice shaking with fury and freedom. No. What embarrasses me is raising two daughters so greedy, so small, they can't stand to see their mother alive instead of dying quietly in a chair. That's the shame. They froze, as if I'd slapped them. For once, they had no words. That night, Nathan returned. I told him what happened, every detail, every cruel smirk. He didn't flare with jealousy this time. Instead, he cupped my face and said, that's it. No more half measures. Tomorrow, we go to the lawyer. Tomorrow, we start eviction proceedings. Patricia, they've left you no choice. I nodded, tears sliding down my cheeks. Not from sadness, this time, from relief. The decision was made. The war was ending. And for the first time in years, I felt like the victor. The lawyer's office was quiet, lined with heavy books and the smell of polished wood. Nathan held my hand the whole time as I signed papers that would change everything. It won't be easy, the lawyer warned. They'll resist. But you have every right to reclaim your home. You're not throwing them onto the street, you're freeing yourself from their control. Freeing myself. The phrase lingered as I pressed my pen to paper, my hand steady. For once, I didn't waver. When Nancy and Sarah found out, the storm broke. You're evicting us? Sarah shrieked, her voice breaking. Your own daughters? You've lost your mind, Mom. Nancy added, tears streaming down her face, but not from heartbreak. From rage. How can you choose him over us? I stood tall, Nathan at my side. I'm not choosing him over you. I'm choosing me. Something I should have done a long time ago. They screamed, they begged, they threatened. Sarah even threw a glass against the wall, shards skittering across the floor like the pieces of our relationship. But I didn't flinch. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of their anger. Nathan stepped forward, calm and steady. You had a good life here. Your mother gave you everything. But you don't get to take the rest of her life too. That ends now. His voice silenced them in a way mine never could. The following days were a battlefield. The girls tried every trick, changing the locks while I was out, moving into my bedroom, to keep me company, even calling relatives to paint me as an unstable old woman led astray by a manipulative man. But each time, Nathan and I stood together. When they changed the locks, Nathan hired a locksmith. When they spread lies, I called every relative myself and told the truth. Piece by piece, their power crumbled. One night, I found Nancy outside my door again, her pillow tucked under her arm like she was staking a claim. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I simply pointed down the hallway and said, "Your time here is ending. Start packing." She looked at me, stunned, as though she didn't recognize the woman before her. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I was finally someone new. Through it all, Nathan never faltered. He brought me tea when my hands shook after confrontations. He kissed my forehead when I doubted myself. He reminded me, over and over, that love at 65 wasn't foolish, it was fearless. One evening, after another exhausting argument with the girls, I collapsed on the couch. Nathan sat beside me, pulling me into his arms. "They'll be gone soon," he whispered. "And then it's just us. Just us and the life we should have started years ago." I buried my face against his chest, breathing in his warmth. "I still can't believe I'm doing this. That I'm free." He tilted my chin, meeting my eyes. "You're not just free. You're alive again." The eviction notice came 2 weeks later. Official. Final. Nancy cried, slammed doors, cursed my name. Sarah packed in stony silence, her anger cold as steel. They left notes, accusations, guilt trips, pleas, but no apologies. And when the day came, when the last box was loaded into Nancy's car, I stood on the porch with Nathan and watched them drive away. I expected grief. Instead, I felt light. As though my house had exhaled for the first time in years. Nathan slipped his arm around me. "They'll hate us for a while," he said softly. "But someday, maybe, they'll understand." "Maybe," I agreed. "But even if they don't, I'll never regret this." The setting sun cast golden light across the yard, the world quiet and waiting. For the first time in decades, the silence was mine. Inside, Nathan set 2 wine glasses on the table and poured. We toasted not just to survival, but to beginning. "To us," he said. "To living," I replied. And for the first time, I truly meant it. The first night after the girls were gone, the house felt unrecognizable. Not haunted, not heavy, just quiet. The kind of quiet that invited you to stretch your arms wide, to breathe deep, to claim every corner as your own. Nathan and I walked from room to room like explorers rediscovering lost land. "This is yours again," he said, running his hand along the hallway wall. "Every inch of it. No guards outside your door. No whispers through the vents. Just us." For the first time in years, I slept with my bedroom door unlocked. I woke to sunlight streaming across my bed, Nathan beside me, his arm draped over my waist, his breath warm against my shoulder. And I smiled. Really smiled. Life didn't become perfect overnight. My daughters called often at first, angry, tearful, sometimes cruel. They accused me of betrayal, of abandoning them. I listened calmly, then ended the calls with the same steady words: "You are always my daughters, but I am no longer your servant." Eventually, the calls slowed. They learned to survive without my wallet as their lifeline. Perhaps they hated me for it, perhaps they grew stronger because of it. Either way, I was free. Jeremy wrote once more, a kind letter wishing me happiness. I replied with gratitude but no false promises. He had been a gentle detour, but Nathan was the road I had waited my whole life to walk. Nathan and I began to live in small, ordinary joys that felt extraordinary because they were ours. We planted tomatoes in the backyard, shared late-night ice cream straight from the carton, argued over crossword puzzles, and held hands during old westerns on TV. He made me laugh at least once a day, the deep, belly laugh I thought I'd lost. And at night, when he kissed me, it wasn't with the urgency of youth, but with the reverence of a man who knew what it meant to almost lose his chance. On our wedding day, my hair pinned with wildflowers, Nathan whispered as he slid the ring on my finger. My heart is alive because of you. My bed is warm because of you. My hands are steady when you hold them. My lips are fed when you kiss me. Patricia, you are my forever. I wept. Not because I was afraid, not because I doubted, but because at 65, I was beginning the life I had always dreamed of. Now, when I sit on the porch with Nathan, sipping coffee as the sun rises, I think of the words my daughter once spat at me: "Who needs you? Look at yourself, your wrinkles, your gray hair." I smile. Because the answer is clear. Nathan needs me. I need me. I don't fear my wrinkles anymore. They are the map of where I've been. What matters is where I'm going. And at 65, I finally chose the road that was mine. I evicted not just my daughters from this house, I evicted fear, hesitation, and the belief that my best years were behind me. Now, I am married. I am in love. And for the first time in my entire life, I am alive.